Reddit, what's your scariest, most disturbing true story? Recently a friend and I were swapping our favorite horror movies. We were childhood friends that grew up in the same Detroit suburb. I was thinking about an incident that had happened when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, 30 years ago, and she says out of the blue, "I don't know if you remember this, but the police started patrolling our neighborhood when we were in 2nd or 3rd grade because when I was walking home from school 2 men in a blue pickup truck rolled down the window next to me and said, 'Hey girl, you need a ride home?' And one tried to grab me. I took off running tearing through yards and I told my mom who called the cops and walked with me to the bus stop after that. I confess that I was thinking about a time when my cousin Sean recently passed away, so he's been on my mind. Also, he was really smart, much smarter than I, and I were wandering around the neighborhood like kids did in the 80s. This blue pickup truck pulled up to us and one of the 2 guys asked us to hop in for a ride. Sean said, "No, thanks," and instructed me to sneak into a neighbor's back porch, luckily unlocked, and stay down. I whispered I was afraid we would get in trouble for not asking the neighbor for permission. Not the brightest kid, I would rather die than break the rules, I guess. And Sean goes, "Stay here and hide, act like we went inside because we live here." One of the 2 guys got out of the truck and went into the yard to look for us. We laid low. About 15 minutes later he left. I look back on it now and think, what a close call. We lived near the area of the Oakland County child killer, though in a much poorer neighbor than he targeted, and I've spent the last few nights reading about the case and thinking about that blue truck. Damn, that's fucked up. Did they catch the guy? Nope. I was a kid in the 70s in Pontiac, Michigan. I remember the Oakland County child killer. They never caught him. When I was 12, I saw 2 tourists struggling to communicate with the cashier at a bookstore in Indonesia. I'm bilingual, so I just hopped over and helped translate before going back to browsing my books. After paying, one of the guys came over to thank me. He wanted to take me out for dinner to repay me. Being 12, of course I told him I can't have dinner without my parents' permission. He went, "I'm sure you can sneak out. Right?" No. By now, I noticed his friend came up behind me, so I'm kind of boxed between them in the middle of 2 bookshelves. My sister had already ducked under one and ran off, leaving me alone. They were really persistent and asked me if I could grab lunch or drinks instead. I'm 12. Finally, one of the salesgirls noticed something was off and came to ask if anything's wrong. I got the fuck out of there. My sister and I went to another store, and suddenly, my sister started freaking out since they were right behind us. Okay, maybe it's a coincidence. We went to a lingerie store. They followed. Okay, we're definitely being followed. We ran to the store our mom was in and the salespeople there called security. I thought they were slightly creepy at that time, but now that I'm older, holy shit, they were fucking creepy. Oh, and I'm Asian, so at 12 I looked 8 or 9. My neighbor tried to grape me in the street when I was 17. Thank God for pepper spray. He ended up in the hospital, in jail, and I ended up in the newspaper as the brave girl. However, as the years went by, he managed to grape 2 more girls. That the police know of. One just a few months ago. And just a note, you know when you see in movie shows someone gets attacked and the person is all of a sudden doing karate moves and whatnot? It doesn't happen, even though I had at all times the mace on the button in my pocket. As soon as he grabbed me from behind, I couldn't feel my legs or arms. That's how scary it is. Imagine I had no weapon. Scary shit right there. This could not have gone better. Good of you to defend yourself. How are you doing now? How did he get out of jail? Well, you know, it was the worst cause. I grew up with this guy. I was in shock, because I was screaming my name so maybe he would recognize who I am and stop. I was thinking maybe he didn't know who I was since I had a hat on, but he didn't stop. I'm never going to forget it. I was screaming so loud for someone to come out, and some of the neighbors came on the balcony. I asked them for water since all the mace that went on his face fell from him into my eyes as well since he was on top of me. The neighbors didn't want to even come down to help me. Some other neighbor came down. Later on I found out the neighbors that didn't want to open the door were doctors. It's just ridiculous. When the ambulance came, they turned him over since he passed out. The buttons on his jeans were opened. That's a shock to me. First thing that came to my head, wow, I almost lost my virginity as a grape victim. It took me a year to finally get back to normal and go out for walks with my friends. In court the guy said he didn't remember anything, but he remembers he unbuttoned his pants to pee. Yeah, right. And the best thing is, since this is such a messed up country, they let prisoners out on weekends if they behave good. Great job, just enough to let a grapist out for the weekend to grape another girl. But I was stupid to even walk alone at 2 a.m. But that's the problem with teenagers, you don't have a car, nobody to drive you home, no money for a cab. I don't need therapy, I just don't leave my house without a car even to go to the store. Girls, carry mace at all times, I can't imagine what would have happened if he had some weapon. Thank God things ended as they did. A few years ago I went to the kitchen around 2 a.m. to get a glass of water. I figured why put the lights on if I'm gonna be done in 5 seconds. Right? So, 10-year-old me was in complete darkness when I noticed someone staring through our window, with their hands pressed against the glass. We had see-through curtains. I screamed at the top of my lungs and froze. Mom woke up and came running to the kitchen to me crying like a baby in my pajamas. He was already gone, but I told her what happened, so she went outside with a knife to look for him but never found him. And that's why we don't have see-through curtains anymore. I still have an irrational fear of the dark. Not sure if you can call that irrational. A bloke added me on Snapchat a while back, some random. Thought he was from school. He starts messaging me on Snapchat flirting with me, which made me feel really uncomfortable since I'm straight. I then told him I wasn't interested in guys where he loses his shit, rages at me saying he wasn't gay. When he was calling me cute and stuff before. I then proceed to ignore him and stop replying to his messages, just leaving him on read. Later on, probably a few days later at around 2 a.m. he messages me and says, check Snap Maps. I check and see his Bitmoji standing outside my house. Needless to say I lose my shit and call the cops. By the time the cops came his Bitmoji was off the maps and he had deleted me. What really scares me is he still knows where I live, meaning he could be out my house at any time. I honestly don't know how he found out where I lived since I wasn't on Snap Maps. Moral of the story, don't add randoms. Sounds like someone you know was fucking with you. As for the Snap Maps, they could have easily faked the location if they knew where you lived. I honestly hope someone was fucking with me. But when he sent me like streaks, it was in a house that I had never seen before and looked dirty as fuck. So it couldn't be one of my friends, and you'd think that his parents would maintain their own house a bit, if it was another student. I've had a creepy coworker follow me all the way home. It freaked me the hell out. The worst part of it was that most people didn't believe me. This is a guy who would just stand in the doorway of my cubicle, enough that I got a rear view mirror for my computer monitor so I could see how long he stands there without saying anything. He did it a lot and would stand for minutes without saying a word. Just watching me. Sometimes he would ask me questions, like what kind and color of car I drive, and then would say, I'm just asking because I thought I saw you the other day. In hindsight, the questions don't seem so innocuous. So, when I looked in the side view mirror of my car when I was a block away from our apartments and saw his face, I was in shock. I couldn't believe he'd actually gone that far. I was on the phone with my husband and told him what I was seeing. I thought I must be going crazy, so I continued on to the apartments while watching him to see if he followed. Sure enough, he followed. Followed me down a street that was merely an entry point for a small neighborhood in my complex. It isn't used really for anything else, and I knew whereabout he lived, so I knew he had no business being there. I turned into the complex, and there he was right behind me. My building was located in a really squirrely part of the complex, way at the back but in the middle, so you had to drive a circuitous path to get there. And he was behind me the whole time, so I didn't go to my building. I passed the turn to go to it and booked it around to the complex exit and tore down the street into the neighborhood, turned around, parked at the end of the street, and watched the complex exit to see if he would come out. I mean, maybe he was visiting someone who just happened to live there. I kept telling myself that. But nope, there he was. Pulled right out of the complex and drove towards the direction of where he lived. I told my boss the next day, totally freaked out. She kind of believed me, it sounded absurd, but she knew I wouldn't make it up, but no one else in charge did. They handled it appropriately at my job and all, but they couldn't really do anything. They could only counsel him on the harassment of watching me work. It scared me, but I wanted him to know I knew and wasn't going to put up with it. So, when he approached me and accused me of being rude to him because I had refused to speak to him ever since that day, I responded with, I saw you. He said, what do you mean? And I repeated myself. He just turned and walked away. I've had other people stalk me and or my home, former homeowners with mental problems, but this one was just too close. It's terrifying to know that if we weren't as observant we could have had a much different ending. There was an ER physician who came to my med school to give a lunchtime talk. While he was there he told a story about an event that happened when he was a resident physician working under a very well-respected attending. A teenage girl came into the ER with all of the textbook signs of bacterial meningitis, fever, stiff neck, sensitivity to light, and a severe headache. Bacterial meningitis is a medical emergency. It can and will kill an individual within 24 to 72 hours. There is a short list of bacteria that cause it, which can be identified by doing a procedure called a lumbar puncture, taking a sample of the fluid surrounding the brain and spinal cord by puncturing the space around the spinal cord with a needle. However, if the patient is showing signs of increased intracranial pressure, from swelling around the brain, making an opening in the spinal column, even with a needle, can have the effect of opening a window on an airplane, and parts of the brain can actually be sucked through the bottom of the skull and herniate into the spinal column, resulting in death. If patients are showing signs of increased intracranial pressure, treatment can be started with broad-spectrum antibiotics without doing a lumbar puncture. There's no reason that the causative organism needs to be identified before treatment. The ER resident did a quick physical exam and noticed signs of increased intracranial pressure in the teenager. He reported this to the attending physician along with his treatment plan, which he planned on starting immediately. The attending physician ordered him to perform a lumbar puncture. He wavered a bit, but ultimately wanted to keep a good relationship with his attending, so he documented what he had found in the patient's chart and then performed the lumbar puncture. The patient's brainstem herniated through the bottom of her skull and she died. The theme, or point, of the talk wasn't about the dangers of the medical hierarchy or advocating for patients, it was about the importance of good documentation. The physician, who at this point had been independently practicing for over 10 years, even stated with pride. And guess who wasn't included on the lawsuit brought against the hospital by the girl's parents because of his excellent documentation? This hierarchy and these people still exist in medicine, and you have no idea, when you receive medical care, if you are being treated by one of them. It's frightening, the amount of medical errors that are knowingly made every year because someone didn't want to speak up or ruin their reputation, even at the risk of a human life. God, that's scary, but really interesting to hear the details of. When I was 7 and my sister was 8, she died of meningitis. I'm pretty sure she was gone before she even got to the hospital, although I don't remember very well and my family never really talked about it after it happened. But the night she died, she was on day 2 of just being sick. She didn't want dinner because she didn't feel well, so my parents had her go take a nap. After dinner my mom went to check on her and she couldn't get her to wake up. Both of my parents took off with her to the hospital. My grandma showed up shortly after. In the middle of the night my parents came in and told us that she died. I was always so scared of getting sick as a kid and my mom was equally scared of me getting sick. She wouldn't let me nap when I didn't feel well, and if she did she would wake me up every 20 minutes or so. Meningitis is ridiculously scary, the symptoms aren't all that different from other common illnesses and the damage come on quick. By the time you realize it may not be just a standard stomach virus or the flu, it might be too late. I was 12 years old, and we were 3 kids sharing 2 bedrooms. So my dad decided to put up a half wall to make a third. If I stood on my bed I could see into my brother's room. We were young and used to throw a ball over before falling asleep. One night I was just drifting off when my mom taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I thought, that's a very weird question, obviously I'm sleeping. So I turn around to answer her, only it's not my mom, it's not a person. It looked like a 3D shadow of a man. Just black. I screamed while my eyes were closed, the figure disappeared. My mom and dad came running into my room. I tell them everything, they think it's just my imagination, but tell me if I'm scared to go sleep in the room with my brother. I tried to sleep but I was shook. My brother woke up once to go use the bathroom upstairs and I pretended I was asleep. I didn't want him to know I was still afraid. I hear him go into my room, right next door, climb on the bed, springs, and then just stopped. I thought he was trying to purposefully scare me, so I look up to show him I'm awake, and see the figure again. Arms crossed with its head resting on his hands. Even though it had no facial features whatsoever, I knew it was looking at me. I try to convince myself it's just dark, it's my brother playing a prank and I'm seeing things. Then I heard the toilet flush upstairs. It was just that one night. I never saw anything like it again, or even close. But years later, in my 20s, I was living alone and felt the tap on my shoulder. "Hey, what are you doing?" I'll stop there cause you'll think I'm crazy, but that was the last time I heard it, and I'm 31 now. It's not a ghost story. I will remember that day until I die. Sleep paralysis? I experience stuff like this multiple times a week. I used to think I might be schizo, but it only happens when I'm trying to sleep. My girlfriend and I went to Walmart one night at about 11:30. We parked close with only one spot open to us on our left. As we were slowly making our ways down the grocery aisles, I happened to notice a guy out of the corner of my eye with no buggy or cart. When I looked over, he grabbed a box of something and stared intently at it. Not the kind of absent-minded, I am shopping kind of look. I make a side note of it, and we continue down a few more aisles. After seeing the man in our aisles and vicinity a few more times, I tell my girlfriend, let's go aimlessly wander around other parts of the store for a bit so I can gauge if my suspicions are correct. About 30 minutes later, we end up at the self-checkout. Guess who is sitting on the bench in front of the self-checkout with no bags? I think to myself, maybe coincidence, maybe not. As we leave the Walmart, all of a sudden I get this feeling and tell my girlfriend to stop, and I stop abruptly as well. When I turn around, this guy has almost run into us. He was following so closely and we had stopped so abruptly. He stared at me like a deer in headlights, and so did I, because I couldn't really mentally process the implications of what he, presumably, intended to do. After a brief deer in headlights, he keeps walking like nothing happens, then gets into a windowless white van that is now occupying the empty left parking spot next to my car. This was a few years ago, and I still think about it a lot and what could have happened. There were too many coincidences for that to merely be my anxiety interpreting the situation as something it wasn't. Late one night, I got a call from a friend I knew was out of town for a conference. My wife and I were in bed, just about ready to turn out the light. My friend was speaking gibberish, but absolutely panicked. She said she was bleeding, she had no idea where she was, then more gibberish. She asked me and my wife to pick her up from the airport. Her flight was cut short or something and she was on her way back. Never got details on why. Bad phone reception along with all the other confusion, so we hopped into the car to go pick her up. This was about 11 p.m. Halfway to the airport, she calls again. More absolute panic. She's sobbing over and over, I'm sorry. And there was nothing to be sorry about. I had no idea why she was so panicked. I told her it's okay, but she was phasing between sobbing and just gibberish. Also, she wasn't flying back. She was in a hotel. We drove next to a mountain and lost the cell signal, but she sounded sure wasn't flying back tonight. The airport wouldn't let her fly. They thought she was drunk. So we turned around and tried calling her for an hour or so. She finally called us. She was in a dark hotel room 2 time zones away, not where her flight was headed, but the layover location. She didn't know if someone was with her in the room, or maybe they had left the room and were coming back. She had no idea why she was there or what hotel it was. Normally, she's a very sharp woman. I had to walk her through the steps of looking on hotel stationery to get the name of the hotel, maybe the address. I had to tell her to look on the phone for the phone number. She's still sobbing and speaking gibberish. She said she was bleeding from her head and her glasses were broken. It was absolutely shocking and grim, and so creepy to hear it coming from her, and not be able to take any kind of command of the situation. I called the police in the city where the hotel was located to get the cops to do a wellness check on her. They took her to the hospital. She had been roofied on the airplane and couldn't tell us anything else about what had happened to her. We picked her up from the airport the next day. She remembered very little of it and seemed to be in complete denial, despite wearing the same clothes she left in and having blood smeared on her forehead and busted glasses. But I remembered the panicked calls and the helplessness. It bothered me for weeks, maybe months. It's still one of the creepiest things I've experienced. Wait, so what happened to her? Did she get kidnapped from her plane? Our best guess is that the airline told her she couldn't fly because she appeared to be too drunk. We're not sure how she got to the hotel. She might have managed to do it by herself, but she would have been very obviously impaired looking. Only her things were in the hotel room, and nothing really was missing. We're not sure if anyone accompanied her to the hotel room, either Good Samaritan or whoever roofied her. If she ever learned more about her experience, she never told me. She outright refused to speak about it for more than a year, as I remember. Dear Lord, is she okay after all that? Did you ever find out what happened? Not the fine details, just that she was well enough to fly the next day. She eventually got counseling for it a year or so later. We only talked about it once after it happened, maybe 2 years later, and all I really asked was if she was dealing with it. Talking about it, no longer denying what had happened.